We know that over the last 3 years, we've seen about a 30% decline in commodity prices. I think over that same time, we've seen the 9 major crops all be underwater.
In the bustling fields of Iowa, green corn stalks sway under wide open skies, and everything looks picture perfect. But behind the beauty, a harsh reality is setting in. Farmers are losing money, and the markets aren't buying. No one is buying these crops, yet they're still growing. And 9 major U.S. crops are now suffering massive price collapses, even as production hits record highs. How did America's heartland, the breadbasket of the world, end up in this crisis? Take a moment and picture this. Rolling fields of corn and soy stretching as far as the eye can see, the sun glinting off the black Iowa soil, tractors humming as they move steadily through the rows. At first glance, it looks like a scene of abundance, the kind you might imagine when thinking about America's breadbasket. But behind the beauty, there's a troubling story playing out quietly in these fields. Farmers like Stu Swanson know it all too well. His grandfather moved from Nebraska to Iowa decades ago, seeking better land and new opportunities. Today, Stu is the 3rd generation on that same farm, carrying the weight of a family tradition that goes beyond profit margins and bank statements. For families like the Swansons, farming isn't just a business, it's a way of life, a rhythm that shapes each generation. It's about early mornings, late nights, and the hope that the land you nurture today will sustain your children tomorrow.
Nebraska 75 years ago.
So each acre of corn will cover 3 times with this machine.
Over that time, U.S. farm productivity and output has nearly tripled, helped by technological innovations.
Over the last few decades, productivity on farms like Stu's has skyrocketed. Modern tractors, advanced irrigation systems, GPS-guided planters, and innovative crop management techniques have turned what used to take days into hours. Acres that once required painstaking manual labor now yield multiple harvests with the push of a button. And yet, despite this explosion in efficiency and output, financial pressures are mounting faster than ever. The math on paper looks promising, but the reality on the ground is harsher. Farmers are producing more, but getting less for it. One of the most visible signs of this pressure is plunging commodity prices. Take corn, for example. Just a few years ago, a bushel could sell for over $7, but today, it hovers around $4. Soybeans have followed a similar trajectory, now trading below $10 per bushel after years of steady decline. Wheat, cotton, and several other staple crops have also taken sharp hits. The result? According to economists at North Dakota State University, the losses across the 9 major crops – corn, soybeans, wheat, peanuts, cotton, barley, oats, sorghum, and rice – amount to billions. Corn alone has seen losses approaching $20 billion, soybeans around $10 billion, and wheat nearly $8.5 billion. The other crops, though smaller individually, collectively contribute significantly to the overall financial strain on American farmers. But falling prices are only part of the problem. Input costs, which farmers can't control, are soaring. Fertilizer prices remain stubbornly high, putting a direct dent into already thin profit margins. Tractors and farm equipment aren't cheap either, and repairs and maintenance can quickly consume any leftover revenue. Modern farming is heavily capital-intensive. It requires enormous upfront investment and constant upkeep. On top of that, high interest rates and mounting debt for operating loans, land purchases, and equipment financing have left many farms in a precarious position. Even with the best yields, cash flow can be painfully tight.
That looks at 10 of the biggest agriculture states here in the U.S. And when it came to Iowa, they are currently predicting a 24% decrease in farm income for next year. I was speaking with...
And then there's the broader economic picture, which adds another layer of stress. U.S. farmers are increasingly squeezed by shrinking markets and trade pressures. For decades, international buyers like China were reliable customers, absorbing vast quantities of American soybeans, corn, and wheat. But trade disputes, tariffs, and shifting global supply chains have pushed these buyers toward alternatives, particularly Brazil, which has aggressively expanded its agricultural exports over the last 40 years. The U.S., once seen as the global supermarket of the world, is finding its dominance challenged, and the result is a growing agricultural trade deficit that hasn't been seen in decades. Meanwhile, supply issues compound the problem. Large harvests in the U.S., combined with strong outputs from other countries, have created a glut of commodities on the market. Oversupply, paired with falling demand, has caused prices to collapse virtually overnight for certain crops. It's a cruel irony. Farmers are producing record yields, but the more they grow, the less they earn per bushel. For families like the Swansons, this means balancing pride in their productivity with the harsh reality that they might be producing at a loss. This convergence of plunging prices, high input costs, and shrinking markets creates a perfect storm for the American farm economy. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's the heartbeat of rural communities where each farm supports local businesses, schools, and families. When farms struggle, the ripple effects touch everyone, from equipment suppliers to feed mills to the neighbors down the road. Farmers are being forced to make tough decisions, sometimes mortgaging land or cutting back on the next season's planting just to stay afloat. The fear is real. If conditions don't improve, some farms might not survive, and with them, generations of farming traditions could be at risk. Yet, despite all these challenges, farmers continue to work the land. The resilience is remarkable. They look for alternative uses for their crops, from ethanol production to livestock feed, attempting to create demand where global markets have faltered. They adapt to new technologies, implement cost-saving measures, and explore local and regional markets. Still, these are stopgap solutions. They can help soften the blow, but they can't replace a robust international market or stabilize commodity prices overnight. In talking to farmers like Stu Swanson, one thing becomes clear. This is about more than money. It's about heritage, responsibility, and the hope that the next generation will carry on the family farm. For centuries, American agriculture has been a story of innovation, resilience, and perseverance. Today, that story faces one of its toughest chapters. If markets don't stabilize and trade relationships don't improve, families like the Swansons could be forced to rethink their way of life entirely. So next time you sit down to a meal of corn on the cob, soy-based products, or wheat bread, remember the journey it took to reach your plate. Behind each bite is a story of generations, innovation, and hard work. And right now, a story of struggle. These 9 major crops, vital to America's agricultural identity, are facing unprecedented pressure. And the farmers who grow them are watching their livelihoods teeter on the edge. The question isn't just about prices or profits. It's about the future of American farming itself.
We're a grain operation. We grow corn, soybeans. I'm a product of the pioneers. It's history. You don't let that go. One of the best memories that I had was just...
When people hear that farm prices are collapsing, they often wonder which crops are really taking the hardest hit. The answer lies in what economists and trade analysts call the 9 major crops, the backbone of American agriculture that together are shaping the financial health of the country's farms. And right now, these 9 crops are feeling the pressure more than ever.
Wondering why farmers are so concerned about their farm finances right now, they really just can't catch a break. It's not just because corn prices are below break even for most. It's the fact input prices are so high, and relief specifically within the price.
Corn is at the top of the list, and it's no surprise why. It's America's most widely grown crop, especially in the Midwest, where states like Iowa, Illinois, and Nebraska dominate production. For decades, corn has been a reliable source of revenue for farmers, feeding livestock, fueling ethanol plants, and supplying countless food products. But recent years have been brutal. Corn prices, which once climbed above $7 per bushel during market peaks, have fallen to around $4 per bushel. That drop translates into a staggering estimated loss of about $20 billion for corn farmers alone. Even with good yields, the revenue isn't enough to cover soaring input costs like fertilizer, machinery, and labor. It's a harsh reality for families who have been farming this land for generations, passing down not just the fields themselves, but a way of life rooted in hard work and resilience.
U.S. soybean farmers are starting their harvest, but they face steep losses that could fuel farm bankruptcies and foreclosures nationwide.
This is awful discouraging. You know, we do our very best to grow a good crop.
Next up are soybeans, another Midwestern staple. Soybeans face losses of around $10 billion, and the story behind those numbers is largely tied to trade. For years, China was America's largest buyer, accounting for nearly half of all U.S. soybean exports. But in recent years, trade disputes and new supply sources, especially from Brazil, have disrupted that market. U.S. farmers are now left with a surplus of soybeans and fewer buyers, driving prices down and creating a situation where even efficient farms struggle to turn a profit. In places like Iowa and Minnesota, soybean fields that once promised stability and steady income now reflect uncertainty and growing financial stress. Wheat rounds out the top three in losses, with estimates around $8.5 billion. Wheat farmers across the Midwest, including states like Kansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota, have seen global oversupply and intense competition squeeze their revenues. Even a strong harvest can't guarantee a good return when prices have collapsed, leaving many farms teetering on the edge of cash shortfalls. Wheat, like corn and soy, is a staple crop not just for domestic consumption, but also for export markets. When those markets shift or shrink, the financial consequences ripple through entire rural communities. Beyond the big three, the 9 crops category also includes cotton, peanuts, barley, oats, sorghum, and rice. Each of these crops plays a critical role in regional economies and farm revenues, even if they don't dominate acreage like corn or soy. Cotton, grown primarily in southern states, has suffered from falling global prices and trade competition. Peanuts, a key crop in states like Georgia and Alabama, face similar pressures from oversupply and fluctuating demand. Barley, oats, and sorghum, while smaller in production, are vital to livestock feed markets and specialty food products, yet their prices have slipped alongside the larger grains. Rice, a major crop in Arkansas, Louisiana, and parts of California, faces competition from imports and a volatile export market. Taken together, these 9 crops are the reason farm incomes are struggling so dramatically. They represent the mix of commodities that U.S. agriculture relies on most heavily, and when prices across this group drop, it affects nearly every corner of the Midwest and beyond. The losses aren't abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. They translate into real challenges for families, communities, and the next generation of farmers. Fields that have been farmed for decades, passed down from grandparents to parents to children, now carry the added weight of financial uncertainty. The emotional and economic stakes are high as families wrestle with the question of whether the next generation will continue the legacy or look for more secure opportunities elsewhere. It's also worth noting that the combined effect of these 9 crops underscores how interconnected modern farming is. A surplus in one crop can drive down prices for another. High production costs in one sector can limit the flexibility farmers have to invest in others. The scale and efficiency of modern Midwestern farms have grown dramatically over the last several decades, but the more they produce, the more exposed they are to market swings. The 9 crops concept captures this interconnected reality, showing how multiple commodity pressures converge to create the kind of economic strain that makes headlines and policy debates so urgent. So when you hear that U.S. farmers are losing money or that prices have collapsed overnight, it's not just one crop or one region that's affected. It's a systemic problem tied to these 9 major crops: corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, peanuts, barley, oats, sorghum, and rice, which together form the foundation of the nation's agricultural output. Understanding the losses across these crops helps explain why farm families are under such pressure, why farmland values are beginning to stagnate, and why the next generation may be reconsidering whether to continue in agriculture. It's a story of productivity and resilience colliding with global markets, trade dynamics, and the simple realities of supply and demand. At the heart of it, these 9 crops tell a story far bigger than numbers. They show how farming in America is not just a business, but a way of life, a heritage that has been nurtured over generations. Families like the Swansons in Iowa or the Myers in Nebraska have watched their ancestors toil the land, innovate, and weather countless storms, both literal and economic. And now, with these 9 crops under severe financial pressure, the story continues, with the added question of whether these fields will sustain the same legacy for generations to come. Understanding the importance of these crops and the challenges they face is essential to grasping the state of modern American agriculture. It's about more than just money. It's about preserving a way of life, a culture, and a system that feeds not just a nation, but the world.
Farming's hard enough as it is, dealing with Mother Nature, but this year especially is very challenging because of the tariffs that have been put upon us. Our cost of production has increased and our markets have dropped dramatically. And this is really putting
In the midst of this crisis, government support has once again stepped into the spotlight. For decades, the U.S. government has acted as a safety net for farmers, and right now, that support is more visible than ever. With crop prices collapsing and farm income shrinking, subsidies and disaster payments are increasing. Last year, the government paid out roughly $9 billion to struggling farmers, and this year, estimates suggest that figure could soar to as much as $42 billion, much of it aimed at those hit by weather-related disasters or simply struggling to stay afloat financially. The government, as many farmers will tell you, has long been a friend of the farmer, a partner in ensuring that America can feed itself and maintain a secure, stable agricultural system. It's an acknowledgement that farming is more than just a business. It's a vital part of national security. After all, a country that cannot feed its population is vulnerable in ways beyond the economic. But here's the thing. Most farmers don't want to rely on subsidies forever. They want markets, not handouts. They want a system where their crops, the corn, soybeans, wheat, and all the rest, can find buyers at prices that make their labor and investment worthwhile. While government aid can help smooth over the rough years, it's not a sustainable long-term strategy for running a farm. There's a subtle but real concern about what economists call moral hazard, where repeated support can create dependence, and farmers might take on risks that they wouldn't otherwise, believing the government will step in if things go wrong. Farmers understand this better than anyone, and many actively push for policies that promote stable, reliable markets rather than indefinite payments. They know that true sustainability comes from a market that works, not from a government check. This tension between market forces and government intervention is central to the current debate in agriculture. On one hand, markets reward efficiency and innovation, pushing farmers to adopt the latest technologies, expand output, and find new ways to maximize yields. On the other hand, markets can be cruel. International trade disputes, global oversupply, and sudden drops in commodity prices can leave farmers vulnerable, no matter how efficient or technologically advanced they are. Subsidies can provide a buffer, giving farmers breathing room during these shocks, but they are not a substitute for real demand. The challenge for policymakers is finding a balance, enough support to safeguard the nation's food supply and help farmers survive unpredictable shocks, but not so much that it distorts markets or encourages risky behavior that isn't sustainable. There's also a larger strategic reason why government support exists: national security. Food self-sufficiency isn't just a talking point, it's a critical element of keeping the country safe. If the United States were entirely dependent on imports for its most basic agricultural needs, it would be exposed to geopolitical risks that could threaten everything from economic stability to public health. The infrastructure and policies that support American farmers, from subsidies to disaster relief to research funding, are designed to ensure that the country can feed itself under any circumstances. This has always been a central argument for agricultural policy, and in times of crisis, it becomes more apparent. Supporting farmers isn't just about fairness or economics, it's about ensuring the nation's security and resilience.
Figures in the fall for delivery. In the current average yield, a cotton farmer is going to lose $375 an acre for every acre of cotton he planted. A corn farmer is going to lose $220 an acre for every acre of corn he planted. A bean farmer is going to lose.
Yet, the debate isn't settled. Some argue that too much intervention can distort markets and create inefficiencies, while others insist that without government support, many farms would collapse, and the country's food security would be jeopardized. Farmers themselves often fall somewhere in the middle. They appreciate the support, especially in years when nature or global markets are unkind, but they also want to see strong, functioning markets that can sustain them in good years. Many families, like those in Iowa and throughout the Midwest, continue to invest in their farms, adopt new technologies, and work tirelessly because they believe that farming can be both a way of life and a viable business, but only if the markets reward their efforts appropriately. Ultimately, the challenge is one of balance. Farmers, policymakers, and the public all recognize that agriculture is not just another industry. It is the foundation of the nation's health, economy, and security. Government support plays a vital role in protecting that foundation during turbulent times, but it cannot replace the need for markets that work, both domestically and internationally. For farmers, the hope is that aid serves as a bridge, a way to survive the immediate crisis without undermining long-term independence or market incentives. It's a delicate balance, one that will determine not just the survival of individual farms, but the future of American agriculture itself. In the end, the story of today's farmers is not only about collapsing prices or rising costs, it's also about resilience, pride, and the complex relationship between markets and the government. Farmers want to sell their crops, earn a fair living, and pass their land on to the next generation. They want markets that work and a system that recognizes the importance of what they do. At the same time, they understand that sometimes government support is necessary to maintain stability, safeguard food security, and ensure that America can continue to feed itself no matter what challenges arise. The question is, how do we get that balance right so that farmers can thrive, markets can function, and the country's food supply remains secure for generations to come?